In this section, we'll take a look at the Configuring and Monitoring Tunnels objective of the JNCIS Service Provider exam. We'll examine how to configure a generic router encapsulation tunnel or a GRE tunnel. For more detailed coverage of this objective and more, please check out the JUNOS Intermediate Routing course. This video, we're going to take a look at tunneling, specifically GRE tunneling. We're going to use this topology to do that. We've got a VMX and an SRX interconnected via some intermediary network connectivity. And this intermediary network already has full routing out to the VMX and to the SRX. So what we need to do to get this tunnel working is we need to configure routing on the VMX facing towards the SRX's external IP address, and we need to do the same on the SRX facing towards the VMX's external IP address. And with that routing in place, we then need to actually get down to the business of configuring the tunnel. And the tunnel has a few aspects of configuration. We're specifying the source and destination of the tunnel. So from the VMX's perspective, the source is going to be this IP address, 192.168.122.1, and the destination is going to be the SRX's external IP address, 192.168.1.1, and from the SRX's perspective, it's completely the opposite. So that's the tunnel endpoints configured. With the tunnel endpoints configured, we then add the network that's going to be tunneled within it, which is this 172.168.1.0/24 with .1 on one side and .2 on the other. And routing from this IP to this IP is then going to be tunneled across the intermediary network. What you could do at a later date is you could configure routes pointing to these IP addresses, and that would then introduce even more traffic into the tunnel. But we're not going to do that in this case. All we're going to do is configure the exterior routing and the tunnel endpoints. So let's get down and configure these tunnel endpoints now. Make a note of these IP addresses, because this is what's we're going to make a note of. If you take a look at these IP addresses, these are what we're going to be using to configure routing on this network. So on the MX, our external interface is GigE000, and on the SRX, it's VLAN.0. So first we configure our static routes. We're routing to the VSRX's IP address. And on the VMX, we're doing the complete opposite. We're routing to the SRX's IP address. We need to test our connectivity. So we've got connectivity running between the MX and the SRX now. So let's configure our tunnels. And we're doing GRE encapsulation, so we're using the GR tunnel interface. On the MX platform, to get access to the GR interface, you need to enable tunnel services under the chassis configuration stanza, which I've done ahead of time. So we're specifying the tunnel source. And we're specifying the tunnel destination. And we're specifying the internal network. So we now have our tunnel interface configured. Let's commit that configuration and move on to the SRX. So this is going to be the complete opposite configuration of what we had on the MX. And there we have our tunnel configuration. So back on the MX now, let's see our tunnel interface. You can see that our tunnel interface is up. Worth noting here that this tunnel is stateless. So as soon as we've configured the tunnel, it's going to be up, irrespective of whether there is actual end-to-end connectivity to the other side. We take a look at our interface on the SRX side. As we expect, it's up. But the trick here is, can we now ping the remote IP address that's on the inside of the tunnel? We can't ping immediately because this is a firewall. So we need to assign the tunnel interface to an appropriate security zone. Don't worry about this step. This isn't on the service provider exam. This is just specific configuration for a firewall. And can we now ping the remote endpoint? Yes, we can. So this traffic is traversing through the tunnel. So we have a look at the counters on the tunnel interface on the VMX. You can see that the input and output packets are incrementing. So we know that these packets are traversing that GRE tunnel that we have. This is a quick overview into tunneling on Juniper devices.